Good evening. Welcome to one more edition of the Kabbalah of Time. Today we're going to be comparing the Torah itself, the Parsha this week, Terumah, and writings in the Noam Elimelech, Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, the Tanya, written by Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the Alter Rebbe of Chabad, and Likutei Moharan from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. So this is a humongous undertaking and it's pretty humbling. So may Hashem help us in this process. Today is the yahrzeit and birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu. Tonight and tomorrow, Zayin Adar, and the zchut of Moshe Rabbeinu, zchut of all tzaddikim, we should do justice, a small way at least, to these holy writings. So the Parsha this week is Parsha Terumah. What's interesting is that the Noam Elimelech, Alter Rebbe, and Rabbi Nachman, they all represent Hasidic dynasties from different parts of Europe. Right, so the Noam Elimelech was from Lezhensk, which is in Galicia, Poland. I think at some point it was part of the Ukraine, but anyway, he's kind of like the Rebbe and founder of Polish Hasidism. And the Noam Elimelech, his book, the focus is on the tzaddik, on how a tzaddik is supposed to serve God in order to sweeten the judgments of the Jewish people. The Likutei Amarim, Tanya, is also known as Sefer Beinonim, the book of intermediate. The intermediate that the Rebbe is talking about is, for all intents and purposes, a tzaddik, just that his heart still contains the Yetzer Hara, even though he never acts on it. It's a very, very high level, but it's still called a Benoni. Likutei Moharan is, I think it's important to say that, and the idea is that every person can reach the level of the Benoni. Not every person can reach the level of the Tzaddik, but everybody can reach the level of the Benoni. And Likutei Moharan is, I don't want to say talking to Rishayim, it's talking to Bali Tshuva, right? It's the whole Indian of Rabbi Nachman was Tshuva, right? And he at one point said even that whatever feeling a person has of Tshuva connects back to him. So his whole approach is from a different perspective altogether. So and you'll see that a lot of times he comes from the other side of the Alter Rebbe, where the Alter Rebbe will start a discussion on something spiritual and how to bring that down to the physical. A lot of times Rabbi Nachman starts with something physical and he explains how that something physical affects the spiritual. Different perspectives from people that are on different levels, right? Not obviously Rabbi Nachman himself wasn't a very high level, but he's writing to perhaps people that are not on that level. There's something from the Noam Elimelech. I guess it's a good way perhaps to explain this difference. One time somebody who studied with the Noam Elimelech came to him and said, I don't understand, we studied together, we know the same thing, how come you're a Rebbe and I'm not? Something along those lines. And Rabbi Elimelech said to him, when you want to eat an apple, do you say a bracha? He says, yeah, of course. When when I want to eat an apple, before eating the apple, I say a blessing. It's okay. That's a level. He says, for me, whenever I want to say a blessing, I look for an apple. So his whole focus is on the spiritual, physical secondary, and to a very big extent, that's true in the writings and how the Alter Rebbe approaches things also. Anyway, again, I'm saying all this with a tremendous humility and pretend to understand any of these great tzaddikim. This has just been my experience, and I think as we compare these different writings and relate them back to the parsha of the week, I think you're going to find tremendous revelations. God willing, Hashem should help us. So I guess one more word. The Noam Elimelech is divided into parshiot, so that's a more easy connection to the Torah. The Tanya is written. There's 52 chapters plus an introduction, and the tradition is that each chapter, including the introduction, is parallel to one of the parshas of the Torah. There's even a book that I have here with me, Tanya Deraita, that kind of explains those connections. With all humility, I had thought of writing a book on those connections before I had seen that book. So it's definitely a tremendous help. So we'll refer to it and sometimes not. And Likutei Moharan, I don't know how this occurred to me. I guess because of Perek Shira and everything, and the weeks of year 52. I noticed that starting from week 52, really 51, Hashem kind of opened my eyes to see how really each chapter, starting with those, represent a parsha in the Torah. So anyway, that was kind of an introduction to the parsha of this week is Terumah, and Terumah starts out talking about donations to the Mishkan, the tabernacle, that each person should give according to their heart's desire, right, to whatever their heart tells them to give. And then talks about, then you will make for me a Mishkan, right, and I will dwell within them. God will dwell within the Jewish people. And then starts describing all the different parts of the Mishkan, the menorah, table, showbread, and the sockets of the Mishkan. A lot of different parts are described in this parsha. But it all starts with a donation of the Jewish people, each according to their heart's desire. So the Noam Elimelech starts his explanation based on those words, right, of the Torah, of Likutei Terumah, just take from your Terumah, and Rashi thinks that means lishmi, for myself, whereas the Noam Elimelech is going to talk about for my name. And it talks about how a tzaddik, through his Torah learning for its own sake, lishma, and he volunteers in his whole heart, right, to God. And through that, he raises up any judgments against the Jewish people, and he sweetens them. Right, so that's kind of the general theme. And later on, it talks about Likutei Terumah, that tzaddik goes up to heaven, takes the blessings from Hashem to bring to the Jewish people. So again, the central role of the tzaddik is really quite evident in the works of the Noam Elimelech. So then, that's one perspective. it's talking about the work of the tzaddik, and that the tzaddik, through his volunteering his heart completely to God, elevates all the judgments against the Jewish people and sweetens them. So the Alter Rebbe's approach, Terumah was the 18th parsha, so chapter, I guess the 19th parsha, and the chapter 18 in the Tanya. So it talks about how it explains this idea of Karov Elecha Davar Me'od, that within every person the service of God is very close. Right? That's actually the verse in which the whole Tanya is based on. What does it mean, Me'od, very close? It talks about that, so even though there's a way of serving God through meditation and thinking of God's greatness, and that will ultimately bring you to a very high level of love of God, right? Which again is the way of tzaddik, which is more similar to what the Noam Elimelech is referring to. There's also a way that every Jew has, right? So then, like again, the parsha says, right, Kol Ish Yisrael, right? Kol Ish, every man whose heart desires shall bring from you Terumah. So here, the Alter Rebbe is talking about how every person has a faster, more innate love that they can have for God, that they have in what they can reveal for God, and that's something that they obtain as an inheritance from the forefathers, who were a chariot completely nullified to God. And then it talks about that even the unworthiest and most sinful Jew draws down, right? That even somebody who is very, very far away can draw down on this level of love, and then talks about Chokhmah of Malchut Atzilut. Anyway, it's already more Kabbalistic ideas of Hashem's wisdom being brought down, and the wisdom in the parsha is clearly reflected in all the different parts of the Mishkan. Okay, so again, so that's kind of like the intermediate perspective, right? Every Jew has it, even the sinner has it, but it's saying that there's approach of the tzaddik, an approach that everybody can have, and then there's the level of where Rabbi Nachman is talking about the chapter 58 and 59, 68 and 69, which Rabbi Nathan explains are really connected, are really one concept. Talks about the idea of money and the idea of how a person, that people have kind of a lust for money. They don't end up loving not only the money but also the rich people. That naturally people have a love for people that have money, and it says that this really comes from the concept of where the source of this money comes from. Because the source of money comes from the same place as the source of the souls. So it's interesting that in Parshat Terumah talks about the idea of everyone from Israel having within them this desire to give money to the temple, to the Mishkan, and it's really coming from the same place as their soul. And then talks about how that a person has to be careful not to get angry, because anger can take away the source of a person's money. Let's say there's a blessing, the person's about to be blessed with a lot of money, if they get angry, they can actually lose that blessing. And they could, and also in general, if a person gets very angry, they could lose a blessing that they already have. And again, there's much more depth here that Rabbi Nachman explains the connection, and he also explains how it's like a wall, saying that the money is connected to a wall, and then choma is wall, chema, anger. They're the same, almost the same letters and same root, and saying that the choma, the wall, can become a chema, can become anger, and person lose their money. And then chapter 69 talks about how again where does the source of this money come from, and how it really comes from the wife, and that all the problems related to somebody who steals money, how that can affect that person's wife and children, and all the, because again it's the source, the very high source of a person's money, and then it talks about in the end of chapter 69 how in order to fix all this, a person can do it through tzedakah. The person obviously can't give the money that they stole. The right thing, that money can only be elevated by returning it. But to give tzedakah from other money that they have, that can repair the damage that is done. Again, so the approach of Noam Elimelech is the approach of the tzaddik, right? It's talking about a person who already has the love for God and uses that love to elevate all the different accusations and judgments on the Jewish people. The Alter Rebbe is talking about acquiring that love and how to do that, either like a tzaddik, focusing on meditating to God, and then for everybody else, including the intermediate, focusing on this innate love that a person has, and even the greatest sinner has, and then that comes from the forefathers who were complete tzaddikim, and then you have and that's that approach, right? Acquiring this love, and through that achieving the results, and then the Likutei Moharan, the approach is the other way around, where not talking about already having the love or acquiring the love. You're starting with don't get angry. By not getting angry, you will be able to maintain or gain the blessings of wealth. The Rabbi Nachman does talk also about how having this lust for money is definitely not a good thing. The person should have a lust for the source of it, which is the source of the soul. And then again, the person talking about very practical things of not getting angry, not stealing, the tremendous damage that's done by that, and then ultimately bringing it back to the tzedakah, right? To giving tzedakah, which is where we started, which is giving donations to the Mishkan. All right, Shabbat Shalom.